Hey everybody, and welcome to the absolute gut of this week. We're going to talk about installing and discussing the whole concept of what the Entrepreneurial Operating System is, EOS. This is without doubt the biggest contribution that I've been able to make in terms of starting an online business, working with private clients, just making sure you're able to do what you need to do. And there's two elements. So this week, we are focusing on discovering what your entrepreneurial operating system is. And thanks to the Colby test, we know the characteristics. I'm going to explain now what entrepreneurial operating system is in detail and give you an example of where I've used the entrepreneurial operating system. And from there, we're going to talk about the different types before we get cracking into this week's work. And I must say, the live Q&A sessions that we are doing this week are very, very important, because this is a way you're going to be able to discuss your results and have us, you'll hear a lot of people who are very similar to yourself. That should give you great comfort. And it'll also allow you to ask questions, well, how do I go about doing this? What am I going to do? And it's amazing what you can do with that as well. Now, throughout this course, I'm going to be using diagrams, and I do not want you to be intimidated by my incredible artistic talent. It's a gift, and not everybody is as gifted as I am, but it won't mean that you won't be able to successfully earn your first dollar during this process or successfully start a business. Hopefully you are picking up the sarcasm. So if you look at, I've got an EOS pyramid here, and if you look at the pyramid on the left, this is typically what happens with a mobile device. First of all, it's got an operating system, right? The iPhones have iOS and Android have, Android as their operating system. Now, the operating system doesn't do much, but it's all important, right? It's not until you actually apply apps that it does anything at all. But without the operating system, nothing else happens. You can install apps, and you couldn't even install the apps because the operating system is what allows that to happen. And even when you actually install the apps, and assuming you get the correct app in the correct operating system, then, of course, it still means nothing until you actually use the app. You act on it, or you make a phone call, or you do any number of these things. Well, your entrepreneurial operating system is the same way. And the discovery was that even though, as entrepreneurs, we're very rare, we're about 5% of the population. And if you're listening to this now, you are an entrepreneur, guaranteed, regardless of your Colby result. But here was the thing. Not all entrepreneurs are the same. And as it turns out, there are three main types and a couple of other very much rarer types of entrepreneur, but we behave and operate completely differently. And so if you try to follow along with somebody that has a different entrepreneurial operating system, like I said, it's like, trying to use an iPhone app on an Android. It won't work. And even worse, it might actually bust the whole phone and brick it, as they say in the industry. So it's very important for us to understand, okay, what's your operating system? And then install the right apps, or in this case, processes that will be effective for you. Some people will be just natural at podcasts. Some people will love writing blog posts. Others will prefer to do videos or screen flows like I'm talking. In fact, there's a delineation. Screen flows like I'm doing now, where my face isn't on the screen, is very comfortable for some people. But then for others, if your face is involved, that makes them very uncomfortable. So if you try to, and this has been key to realizing that, why do people work so hard? I mentioned in the introduction this week about, people like Josh Houston who have worked so hard. You can tell, like, they've tried everything, but nothing has ever stuck in terms of creating a business that could help them move away from their 9-to-5 job. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just you're using the wrong apps, the wrong processes for your entrepreneurial operating system. So once you recognize that, you can do all sorts of things to get the right result. You know where you need to go. The direction's the same. We all want to earn our first dollar, get our first emails, make $100,000 in 12 months and more than that, beyond that. We know where we all want to go. We all want to go to the same destination. But the way we get there is completely and utterly different. And this was a mind-blowing revelation. And so thanks to Kolbe, we're actually identifying the types of entrepreneur you are. And then we can use that knowledge to cater and customize how you go about getting your first dollar and how you work with your tribe and how you build your tribe based on your entrepreneurial operating system. You know, we don't want you to be playing tennis with a baseball bat. I actually did a Google for tennis with a baseball bat, and there's a very clever TV ad which shows people playing tennis with a baseball bat, but it's all faked. It'd be impossible, right? So we don't want to do that. Now, let me give you a case study here, and the case study is me, right? I have been trying to do the Your First Dollar book for 12 years, and I talked about that in one of the introductory videos, so I don't want to specifically talk about the book. We've already discussed that. But writing is a part of the job, right? And you saw my Kolbe results when I took you through my Kolbe results. At all costs, I should avoid trying to write things down because it's a real massive energy suck for me. And it's true. I can write a good article, and this is where they get you, right? This is where they get you. You know, you could potentially produce a great video. You could potentially do a really good podcast. You could do a potentially really good report or written report. But what people don't take into account is the energy required to do that. You know, I've written some blog posts which have literally been read by millions of people. They've had millions of views. But it's just not natural for me to do that. So what I thought I'd do is I'd give you a little bit of a description of how using my entrepreneurial operating system, which you've all seen, and approximately 60% of you have a similar entrepreneurial operating system. So how do I go about writing an article so it actually gives me, so I can do it in a positive energy way, so I can write an article based on my strengths, even though writing stuff down is not my strengths. So how do I go about doing that, right? So, you know, it actually starts with the Kanban, but we'll start there later. So the first thing I do when I'm creating a post is I set a timer for 10 minutes and I write pen and paper as I'm teaching you to do 10-minute focus finders. And indeed, that'll be part of your action steps for this week. So spoiler alert. I started with a sentence of figuring out what the blog post was going to be about. And it was start less, finish more. And so the 10 minutes that I'm doing here of quick writing is not for publication. Nobody else will see it. It's just about warming up my brain. And then once I've done the 10 minutes, that's just a warm-up. I can literally shred that piece of paper. I don't need it because then I outline. Remember, outlining is a strength, and particularly visual outlining. So these days, what I'll either do is I'll use Post-it notes on a whiteboard or I'll do a mind map on my iPad, both very visual processes. Now, some of you are freaking out right now because this is just completely opposite to how you work. It's cool. You can do it. In fact, the people who are freaking out can write the traditional way that we are taught in terms of outlining and writing. It's something you find invigorating and strengthening, whereas us high quick start squirrel types freak out at the mere concept. So notice I'm using a timer all the time. So I'd set a timer for 25 minutes for my outline. Because if I don't have a deadline in place, you saw my Kolbe profile, I will just keep putting it off. So by having this constraint, it works with me. You know, and I often talk about cooking shows and the Master Chef. Now, here's the trick. Once I've outlined, guess what I do? I dictate. I use Dragon dictation software I actually use a little Philips recorder, and you can have a look at yourfirstdollar.com/tools if you're actually interested in seeing exactly what I use. Tools don't really matter, but I dictate, and that's the cheat. That's the real trick. Because if I was writing this stuff out, I can do it, but at the end time, I'm very slow. I'm a very slow typist. So I can max type 30 words a minute, and that's not touch typing, let me tell you. So I dictate, and here's the thing, I can type flat out, because I've timed myself, I can get about 670 to 770 words typed out in a 25-minute sprint, a 25-minute writing session. I can dictate 2,500 to 3,000 words in 25 minutes because this is my natural way of operating, just like I'm doing now. And that's the way I can make a writing thing done. But the job's not done, right? Because that's vomit. I vomited up my first draft. Then I need to go and edit. And here's the thing. One of the most important things is the tricks with editing is to wait till the following day so your brain can have a completely fresh look at it. Because anybody who's particularly like me, if you try to edit straight after you've written something, you're in for a world of pain. Because I've just felt like I've been trapped in this process for too long and I need a break. And so I've got to plan breaks in. So these are all parts of the process. So that's how I use, because I understand my particular entrepreneurial operating system, I can create a process which actually works to my strengths and still at the end of the day delivers an edited, excellent article without me having to type a thing. And that's really cool. Now, guess what? We've got a couple of Q&A sessions this week. Let's brainstorm, right? Let's talk through how if there are processes that you need to do, let's now understanding your Kolbe number, let's brainstorm and come up with strategies and approaches for you to tackle the key tasks that you need to do. For our list types, which I'm about to describe shortly, we need to come up with processes for you so you can focus on the process. With fact finders, we need to figure out ways of getting you off the research and we can use constraints to do that. All of these sorts of things. So without further ado, let's look at the 3 main operating system types. And the first type is the squirrel. Now, we're not actually the squirrel, we're the dog chasing the squirrel. It's pretty amazing where you just constantly looking for other. If you're the type of person, you read my Kolbe report because this is me, right? We're constantly looking at things, but then we see something cool like a squirrel and we're distracted and we go and try to do that. If we're stuck in a process for too long, we're in all sorts of problems. So for us, it's very important for us to have that variety. We need that variety as well as all the other elements. And you saw all the recommendations with your Kolbe. We certainly can't follow to-do lists and organization systems. We love trying them. We love setting them up. We love buying all the books. I've got a shelf full of them. But when it comes to implementing, we're stuffed. And of course, next week, we're going to solve all of those problems. But it also goes to the type of content that we're really good at. Like I'm doing now, off the cuff. I've planned this, of course. I had to build the presentation. I know what I'm going to say, but it was in bullet points, and then I can use the presentation as my guide. We feel better about speaking off the cuff. I'm happy sticking my head in front of a video. There are variations on the theme of people who are and aren't. A podcast that's not scripted might be a thing that is a very powerful cookie delivery mechanism, which you'll find all about in a few weeks' time. So all of these things define the squirrel. Remember, there's no bad results. There are incredibly successful entrepreneurs with all of these categories. It's just recognizing what your entrepreneurial operating system is and then applying it. And of course, the great thing about doing this implementation program is that in our Q&A sessions, we can actually use your examples to actually, brainstorm and come up with specific approaches to things that you have to do. Because this goes beyond, right, just building your business and, us getting our first emails, building our first funnel, making our first dollar. This goes to everything, your life, your relationships. It's pretty profound. And it really can make a massive, and it has already made the difference in hundreds and hundreds of people that I've exposed this to. So I'm really excited to be bringing that to you. Okay, so who else have we got? Well, we have the research addict, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. What's in Kolbe terms, this is a person with a high fact finding, a relatively lower follow through, under 6, and may or may not have a decent quick start. but you love the research, right? You love the process. You know, learning and watching this stuff is like educational crack cocaine to you. The challenge is getting you to move to testing and getting into the marketplace, because you really want to know what's right and what's wrong first. You want to know that the process is going to work. You don't want to do your time. So you'd much rather prefer to plan and prepare to make that happen. And so a lot of the process over the next 6 weeks is utilizing your incredible strengths. Often they make good writers. I can often tell a high fact finder by the length of emails I receive. You know, you can guarantee the person is not a high quick start if I get a short email. And you'll notice if I ever reply to you, they tend to be pretty short. But I love my long emails. Please don't mind. But remember, I'm a high quick start, low follow through, so don't expect war and peace back. But these are the type, once you know, and this is why it's so powerful when you know what your team and who you're working with, you know their Colby as well, then you can make sure people are working on their strengths all the time. And we can use that energy bar that you saw in the Colby report really effectively. And when we talk about implementing and installing your entrepreneurial operating next week using Kanban for entrepreneurs, wow, it'll become really powerful. The third type has been totally shaking their heads till now, because when it comes to productivity systems, not only do they do them, they follow them religiously. They're brilliant at it. They haven't met a Gantt chart or a project management sheet that they didn't love and can implement, and their follow through is immense. They will always be on the case and on the job. I have just incredible jealousy and respect for the high follow-through, high fact-finder types. They're a relatively rarer type of entrepreneur, and I guarantee anybody, any of the entrepreneurs who created productivity systems are this high follow-through, high fact-finder type of entrepreneur. The challenges that we need to work are, you know, where we spend all our time creating the processes and following the processes to the detriment of actually testing things in the field and getting out in the field. And marketing tends to be high fact finders, low follow throughs, still very comfortable with marketing. The high fact finders, high follow throughs, you know, you can hesitate a little bit when it comes to actually pushing the button on marketing campaigns. But what's cool, and what you'll see as we work through this process, that there are methodologies around this. So we can cater to your extraordinary talents and use those powers for good instead of marketing procrastination. So, you know, there's plenty to do that. I remember, Kathy Hargis, who, a dear client and has been to a number of live workshops, and she is a super high fact finder follow through. And I remember sending out an email saying, hey, bring Post-it notes to our next workshop. And of course, she shot back immediately with what color and what size. I didn't know there were different size Post-it notes. I thought, you know, just the square ones. That's how I would approach it. But a high follow-through, high fact find. And she's quite right. There's 3x5, 5x5, there's 3x3. And I had to go and look at what the actual original size, 3x3, for those of you who are interested, turns out that's what it is. And that's awesome. Sometimes that level of detail is mandatory, right? It's really important. And when you're looking at analytics and reports and checking like that, you know, that high follow through is making sure and seeing the results of tests is awesome. So, and like I said, no bad results. We just have to account and we have to adjust and modify our approach so that we can just focus on our strengths. Now, there are a couple of other rare, but they are totally cool types. You'll notice almost across the board universally that our implementer scores tend to be quite low, under 5. Entrepreneurs tend not to be the hands-on type. However, there is a very, very small percentage that actually of entrepreneur that has a really high implementer, and almost inevitably they're inventors. They are inventor types. So that's awesome. And if you happen to fall into that category, that's great. Let us know and we can work with you. There are some definite challenges when it comes to doing marketing and getting you out of building the product first and instead looking at minimum viable products and testing things first when you're such a craftsperson and a perfectionist at making and delivering things. That is a superpower in a lot of cases. But we just had to, again, like all of these entrepreneurial types, we have to allow for that as well. Now, the last type which pops up every now and then is a result where you get a transitional result. And this is a bit freaky, I've got to say. Inevitably, what a transition result digs up and tells me is that, and it's sad, but not sad. It's great. It's great that I know, because again, doesn't mean that you can't implement this. Doesn't mean that you cannot make your first dollar and build your first funnel and all those sorts of things. But it does mean we need to know, because it's, typically you've had some of, well, there's no way to get around it, traumatic event that has occurred in the last couple of years. It's freaky. Now, people think I'm a bit of a psychic freak when I say, oh, look, I hate to pry, but something happened, a pretty major event in your life, probably negative. It tends to reflect that. I was speaking to somebody who I was pretty sure I knew their Colby result, and they said, oh, I'm this transitional. And I thought, that's strange. You're not, I don't think you're that. And then I found out that they'd actually done their Colby a number of years ago. And I said to them, hey, let me ask you, did you take that Colby just after a particularly traumatic event? Turns out their business collapsed. And they did the Colby not long after that. And no, not surprisingly at all, it was transitional. I said, you've got to go back and do your result. And of course, they turned out to be exactly what I thought, which was a high fact finder, low follow through type, a educational addict type of entrepreneur, which is awesome, totally cool. So if you are listening to this and you are in that transitional category, never fear. This is why the Q&As are here. That almost rhymed. Because we are going to be able to work through it, and I can help you work through it, because often what we need to do is we need to just drill back into the times prior to that to sort of figure out, what was useful in those times to identify your EOS back from before the event happened or the change in circumstance happened. Now, with all these things, there's exceptions to the rule, and there's always, it's, as amazing as this stuff is, and as the amount of times, it's unbelievable. Like, people just say, oh, wow, this Colby was just, it just described me to a T. There are always exceptions. And, if that's you, I'd love to hear from you. Always feel free to jump on a Q&A and talk it through, because that is, it's great. But as long as we know what type you are, then we can cater for all of this. And most importantly, in this 6-week period, I want to teach you how to take anybody's course, anybody's how to do, either it's a YouTube video, it doesn't matter what it is, a book. We're going to show you how to take it and turn it so it fits beautifully for your entrepreneurial style. Can't wait to do that. So next week, we're going to be all about the installing the entrepreneurial operating system, your EOS. And we do that through the magnificent Kanban for Entrepreneurs process. Can't wait to take you through that. But of course, before that, we're going to have Q&A sessions this week. Now, I'll email you separately to all of this to let you know the times that we are doing the Q&A for this particular week. And so you know when they're all coming. But please join them, please. So we can, this is the power of this implementation program. So that we can, and you just need to dial in on a phone. We've tried to keep them super simple, so technology is not even an issue. You can just dial in from a phone wherever you happen to be. Of course, you can use a computer if you're in a country that doesn't have a local dial-in number, or you do want to, that's how you roll. That's totally cool. But I'd much rather you phone in than not do it at all. And maybe you can take your lunch break, jump on the mobile phone. It's awesome to do that. So please make sure you join us for the Q&A sessions. And in our final video, I'm going to talk about okay, here's the steps. Here's what we're doing this week. But there you go. That's an overview of our entrepreneurial operating systems. And now we've got this mental representation. Now we've got this methodology. You'll understand when I say squirrel type or high fact finder or high quick start or inventor. You'll know what I mean. We've got shared terminology, which will become crucial as we work together throughout this process. All right, gang, speak soon.